Hello, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope that this week has treated you all well, and the weekend is going to treat us even better. We are so happy to see everybody. Hello, Sanai. We are so happy to see everyone taking time out to join us and having the opportunity to learn how to make a delicious, nutritious meal by the hands of Miss Drew, Coach Drew, as we have cited her to be as a parent and as a culinary expert. So we are so happy to have Miss Drew on board. So as Miss Melissa said, to have everybody just get settled in and partake of the goodness ahead.
I Will Never Not Ever Eat a Tomato by Lauren Child. From the series of Charlie and Lola. I will not ever, never eat a tomato. I have this little sister Lola. She is small and very funny. Sometimes I have to keep an eye on her. Sometimes Mom and Dad ask me to give Lola her dinner. This is difficult because she is a very fussy eater. Lola won't eat carrots, of course. She says carrots are for rabbits. I said, what about peas? Lola says, peas are too small and too green. Lola was sitting at the table, waiting for her dinner. And she said, I do not eat peas or carrots or potatoes or mushrooms or spaghetti or eggs or sausages. I do not eat cauliflower or cabbage or baked beans or bananas or oranges, and I'm not fond of apples or rice or cheese or fish sticks, and I certainly will never, not ever eat a tomato. My sister hates tomatoes. And I said, that is lucky because we are not having any of those things. We are not going to eat any peas or carrots or potatoes or mushrooms or spaghetti or eggs or sausages. There will be no cauliflower or cabbage or baked beans or bananas or oranges. We don't have any apples or rice or cheese or fish sticks, and certainly no tomatoes. Lola looked at the table. Then why are those carrots there, Charlie? I don't ever eat carrots. And I said, oh, you think these are carrots. These are not carrots. These are orange twiglets from Jupiter. They look just like carrots to me, said Lola.
But how can they be carrots? I said, carrots don't grow on Jupiter.
That's true, said Lola. Well, I might just try one if they're all the way from Jupiter. Not bad, she said and took another bite. Then Lola saw some peas. I don't ever eat peas, said Lola. I said, these are not peas. Of course they are not. These are green drops from Greenland. They are made out of green and fall from the sky. But I don't eat green things, Lola said. I said, I'll have your share. Green drops are so incredibly rare. Well, maybe I'll nibble just one or two. Oh, said Lola, quite tasty. Next, Lola saw the potato. I will not eat potatoes, so don't even try. Not even mashed. Oh, this isn't mashed potato. People often think that, but no. This is called fluff from the pointed peak of Mount Fuji. Oh, said Lola. In that case, a large helping for me. I love to eat clouds. Charlie? Those look like fish sticks to me, and I would never eat a fish stick. I know that. These are not fish sticks. These are ocean noodles from the supermarket under the sea. Mermaids eat them all the time. Ooh, I went to that supermarket one time with Mom. Yes, I know the one. I think I've had them before, Lola said, gobbling. Are there any more? And then she said, Charlie, will you please pass me one of those? And I said, what, one of those? And Lola said, yes, Charlie, one of those. And I couldn't believe my eyes because guess what she was pointing at? The tomatoes! Are you sure? Really? One of these? And she said, yes, of course, moon squirters are my favorite. You didn't think they were tomatoes, did you, Charlie? This is the end of the book. This is a read aloud by Agnia Fadila. Thanks for watching, guys, and I hope you liked it.
So as you can see, if you didn't already know, today we're going to talk about cooking and the selective eater. And as I was doing the research, I found out calling people picky eaters is kind of negative. So the newest term that we're using is selective eaters, because sometimes people just choose to not eat certain foods, and some people have to be, like Lola, convinced of different ways to try new foods. So Coach Drew is going to lead us today in a cooking demonstration where she's going to introduce some foods that may be new to some of you, may not be, but things that may be harder to get kids to try unless you convince them. So Drew, I'm going to spotlight you.
Perfect.
I'll make you a co-host if you need to be.
That was I was going to say, I would love to be a co-host. And then I'll introduce myself here, and then we'll have our awkward turn moment where I get it so that you can see me cooking.
Okay, no problem.
First of all, Melissa, I love that book. And I love that the whole time I was thinking, so as Melissa referenced earlier, my name is Drew. I'm the kitchen manager and educator at JFCS. I really love to cook. I really love to cook with my family. It's what I do professionally, but I get really excited about these groups because I really love cooking with my daughter and kids in general. But I will totally admit that as a person who professionally cooked with small children for many years now, cooking with my daughter is a whole different ballgame. And the whole time that book, they were reading that book, I was thinking, this is great because she's making the vegetables fun, right? She's making them fun and creative, and she's being silly. This kid seemed about my daughter's age. She knows she's eating a tomato. She knows she's eating a pea. She knows she's eating mashed potatoes. She knows that, but it's the playfulness that's kind of reoriented and changed it a little bit. And I find a lot of the time in our house, we make green monster smoothies. They're just smoothies with spinach in them, but we call them green monster smoothies, and we pretend to run away from them or that we're going to drink them and turn into monsters. And it's just the kind of lightening of it, it's not the exhausted yelling at her to just eat her spinach. That reframes it. And also some nights we just get to a point where we yell at her to eat her spinach, and it's not fun for everybody, and it's just a very human moment, and it totally happens. It just totally happens. So I really loved that book as an introduction, Melissa. Today we are going to make salmon burger with sweet potato fries, and I love the term selective eater over picky eater. I feel when somebody says I'm picky about something, I get defensive. And when you say you're selective, I feel like it's my choice. I feel, and I can choose out of that. I can choose out of being selective. And some kids, honestly, are selective with really good reason. Their 4-year-olds' entire worlds are transitional and crazy and happening really quickly, and there's so much new. And so what they might want is bland beige food, because they know when they bite into something beige, the chance that it will taste the same every time But tomato doesn't taste the same every time. That can be overwhelming for a kid who's, you know, has the whole world waking up for them. And I try to remember that on really long days. My daughter eats pasta with butter for dinner because energetically, just for her to start investing energy in eating things that make her a little uncomfortable and she's not sure of, can be a lot, and it's okay. So this recipe I really love because it has a few different parts. I also love to eat, and I'm not going to lose eating good meals because I have a selectively eating 4-year-old. I'm not giving up on it. I look at every meal as an opportunity to eat really good food. And when I don't eat a really good meal, I feel like I've kind of like missed a chance. So this recipe I really love to eat. And also it's a salmon burger that you can eat over a salad or as like a traditional burger. You can change up the toppings and get creative with it. With sweet potato fries, similarly, you can change up the spices and seasonings on them, or just leave them really plain. And I know my daughter a lot of the time will eat a roll with some ketchup, the salmon burger, and the plain sweet potato fries. She'll eat those, and that feels like a win for me. We're sitting down and eating together. We're eating kind of the same things, but she doesn't want her food touching that, you know, and that's her choice to make, and that's okay. But yeah, so we're gonna get cooking in a minute. If we have time towards the end of today, I have some different things to look at with all of you, but kind of knowing that that's what we're gonna learn, and that's kind of the introduction of and we'll talk about specifically why are we doing salmon. I'm actually going to use tuna today because I ordered just enough salmon to go out to you all. So I'm using the tuna I had at home, but we're also going to talk about what tuna you would use and some specifics around whole grains. We'll get into a few different things, but I wanted to ask the folks who are here today, if there are specific things that coming into this you would like to learn, certain things you've been struggling with or dealing with it at home around getting kiddos to eat well or eat with you.
Salmon is one of them.
You what?
Salmon is one of them.
Is one of them. Who
Yeah. For my son, they don't like seafood, so I try to get him tilapia. Fish, they like that one. Salmon, okay. So good, but I think because I don't know how to make it right. So I'm so happy that this is about salmon, that you can teach me.
I'm so glad. And also in our house, we call salmon pink fish because anything pink is really exciting. And so, you know, it's even something like that, like Levy's pink fish. Okay, great. Yeah, I'm so glad. And salmon is it's different fish are good for you for different reasons. And salmon is actually really cool to me because it's an oily fish, so it's high in omega-3 fatty acids, which are really good for your brain. So I find sometimes nourishing my brain as well as my like developing kid's brain is really great. So I'm glad to hear that. Anything else? Any specific things people want to get out of today?
Yes, I do. I have a 6-year-old granddaughter.
Okay.
Who, we're having a hard time trying to feed her. Period. She doesn't like most of anything. She knows chicken.
Like
huh?
Does she not like eating?
No, she'll eat as long as what she wants, but we can't give her the same thing every single day. We gotta expand her because she's really quite underweight. So we're trying to get weight on her.
Yeah.
So it's hard for us to feed her. Like, let's say chicken, she knows. She'll eat chicken.
Okay.
But any other meat beyond that, she really don't want. Literally.
Interesting. Okay, can we talk about that more at the end too? All right, great. All right, anything else folks want to get out of today?
My kids just want to see the cooking lesson. They like to cook at home. So I'm just saying they like to cook. My kids are not picky eaters. They love that. They're big on vegetables. They love green smoothies. Mom. You want to talk?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. You can talk.
I like eating salad. I love eating salad, cookies, and And can I show her my cookie set?
No, you can show her your cookies later.
My cookie set.
Oh, your cooking set. Oh, your baking set. You can show that at the end. What's your name?
William Kelly Cut Irvin.
And do you like to
You
do
can
the
show her
dishes too?
You know, I'm the cooker.
You're the cooker.
Okay.
You're the cooker.
Mm-hmm.
She loves to cook. She
I
cooks.
love that. Okay.
Meals.
Let's start showing you the cooking combo because it seems like this is a recipe that the two of you or three of you are going to be able to cook together really well. So I'm going to orient you so you can see. Oh no, that is not where we want to be. Yeah, okay. Okay, great. I'm gonna grab my can opener and I forgot. Always the thing I forget. Okay, let's start with sweet potato fries. So the first thing we're gonna make is some sweet potato fries, and I'll just, in the interest of time, I'm gonna make a little batch of everything. Whole sweet potatoes, there's a lot of great nutrients, including vitamin A in sweet potatoes. When it comes to thinking about eating well and eating nutritiously and healthy, I always encourage people to not think too hard about if something has vitamin A or vitamin C or vitamin D, unless it's something that you've been told you're deficient in and need to be really trying to get more of it. But really what I suggest is eating a variety of fruits and vegetables, eat different colors. So we're getting some orange in, we're getting our sweet potatoes, and sweet potatoes have so much nutrients in the skin. I am also a big proponent. I give my 4-year-old she has like a little knife. It's a real knife. It's a real blade to use. I really encourage folks to let kids use knives. Sweet potatoes are not a great starting vegetable. But if you do have young people who are comfortable using knives and like using knives, first of all, you can demonstrate to them to use a claw. So put your fingers on top and that makes it a little bit more steady and your thumb behind. And if you're cooking with somebody who's knife ready, you can show them first you want to cut the side off and to get it flat. And then you can cut the strips for them. So we're going to make fries. So I'm cutting these just into kind of strips that are about the width of my pinky. And now I'm not going to share my cutting board with my kid, but I'm going to pass them to them on another cutting board. And now we have a flat piece. So if you're comfortable letting kind of some of the older kids then help cut them into sticks, that is a good place with the sweet potatoes. The sweet potatoes are really hard and really round, so they can be a little bit challenging. I'm leaving the skin on because the skin has a lot of nutrients. Choose your battles. If your kids are not going to eat these because they have skin on them, peel them. It's okay. And you can also make this recipe with potatoes. I worked with a registered dietitian who really loved to say that like potatoes are like the long lost vegetables. People love hating on potatoes. What makes potatoes unhealthy is deep frying them, but tossing in them some oil and putting them in a pan in the oven they have a lot of good nutrients in them. So, and I'm putting my hand, for some of these I'm putting my hand on top and pressing down as a way to keep my fingers out of the way. I also was about to say COVID has been really hard for me. For everybody. I love teaching with people and interacting. So if you have questions or just want to add something, there are probably folks here who have been cooking for much longer than I have. Feel free to interject and let me know what you're thinking and let me know if you have any questions. All right. So I've got my sweet potatoes, and I'm going to double check my recipe for what I want. I have my oven preheated to 400 degrees, And I'm just gonna toss my sweet potatoes with olive oil. You can use olive oil, you can use vegetable oil, any plant-based oil. All right, so that's probably about 1 tablespoon. I'm using a little bit less. So I've got my sweet potatoes, my olive oil. I'm gonna do a little salt. A little bit goes a long way. Some pepper. We in our house, and once again, this is specific to each of our households. So I love smoked paprika. Lev loves smoked paprika. She just calls it pepper. She eats it on her oatmeal. When you find something they like, you just let them go with it, within reason. But so I did a little smoked paprika. But if that's not a taste that folks in your household like, then skip it or change it up. This would be really good with some cumin, or just oil, salt, and pepper, honestly. So I'm tossing these, and I want them to just be nice and have a little cover on them. I'm gonna add a little more oil. And I don't have to drench them in oil. I just want them to be really lightly coated. All right. I am going to grab a piece of parchment paper because I always like to tell people I am the laziest cook who greatly dislikes cooking and cooks the most. I cook so much. I cook for work. I cook for my family. And I want to keep cooking. So I just put parchment paper down so that I can just clean this more easily. You don't need it. I'm going to spread these out. The trick to getting brown pieces is spreading it out. This is another great, always make sure you wash your hands. This is a great step. So we have ways to integrate kids into this recipe, right? We have the cutting part. We could definitely have a mixer or somebody to help put spices on. But this is definitely one also, is just lining these up. And, if you're, depending on age, if you're counting, can you do lines of 5? You can, definitely turn this into a numbers lesson. So counting, there can also be a creativity, letting kids kind of make a design however they want. All right, I'm gonna put these in the oven. So sweet potato fries. And I'm gonna set a timer for 5 minutes. Yep. Just to make sure I don't forget about them. So these are gonna take well over 5 minutes. Sweet potatoes, how dense they are, how hard they are influenced by the soil they're grown in, the amount of water they got while they were growing, the different nutrients in the soil, how they were cured, which is like after they're harvested, they have to get warm, and then how long they've been stored for. So any recipe you read for sweet potatoes, just take the amount of time they're telling you to roast or saute or what have you, with a grain of salt. So I'm going to check these at 5 minutes, and at 5 minutes, if they haven't gotten anywhere, I'm probably going to set a 15 more minute timer. I've had sweet potato fries be ready in 10 minutes. Okay. All right, I'm going to wash my one dirty pan. Ready?
So I know one thing that I learned when I started cooking, roasting vegetables in the oven, was that if you're a person who thinks about like putting sugar on sweet potatoes or like candy sweet potatoes, one thing is that when you roast the sweet potatoes on like a high heat, over time, it brings out the sweetness of them. So try not to introduce any kind of sweetener. Even though it's a sweet potato and you might be used to eating it sweet, try not to introduce any kind of sweetener when you cook it.
I love that suggestion, Melissa, and you're totally right. Letting them go a little bit really gets them like caramelized and nice. All right. So salmon, canned salmon is like it's so great. It is a little bit more expensive, but not exorbitantly more expensive than tuna. It is sometimes I've noticed it on sale a bunch because I think people don't know how to use it. It's a lot less popular. Who knows, when you're eating canned tuna, does anybody know what you have to watch out for?
Sulfate?
Mercury.
Mercury, which affects your body more when you got developing brains, right? So if you're pregnant or you have a young kid, you want to watch out for mercury. So if you are using tuna, using light, not white. Always just think light, not white. I also, when I'm in the grocery store, especially if I'm shopping with Lev, sitting there and reading the cans of tuna is not happening in my day. I just know I usually buy my tuna from Trader Joe's and it's this green color. I just remembered the color of the can. So similarly, if you often buy one brand of tuna, if that's a popular thing in your house, just remember some visual cue of the can. That said, what fish doesn't have, has barely, all fish has mercury, very low levels of mercury in salmon. So that's why salmon is a really good alternative. And you can use canned salmon in any way that you can use tuna, really. Like you can make a tuna salad with salmon. So I'm gonna just drain the water off of this. And
Sabrina, did you have a question?
yes.
Yes, my question with the tuna, what's the difference between solid white tuna and albacore?
I hate this question. No, I'm joking. I don't hate this question. Oh, I think I have a lot of trouble remembering this. I think white, and I think albacore is a type of white. Is albacore is the big one. I think skipjack and yeah, skipjack is the small one. Does anybody else know this? I know it usually has both names. So all of the cans of tuna will say light or white and the type of fish it is. And the white ones are the larger ones. So they eat more small fish, so they have more mercury.
It just tastes a little different. That's why I was
wondering.
They taste a little different.
They taste a little different. How do they, what have you noticed in their different tastes?
I prefer the albacore. Is less watery, is more, you can hold it better.
Oh.
It's not as like mushy as the regular tuna. I don't know if anybody else experienced that. That's all.
And the albacore is one of the white, right?
Yes. Yes.
So if you have a preference for it, and I'll show you in a few minutes. So as an adult, you can eat a good amount of tuna and it's fine. Your brain is developed. But for younger kids, there is a breakdown of if you are eating the white, you should eat it, I think, half as often as the white. Okay. The other thing I'll note is that I bought tuna with salt in it, so I'm conscious of that when I'm cooking this. So I've just mashed up my tuna in this bowl. I'm gonna add my egg. The recipe and the ingredients we're gonna send out to folks make enough for 4. I'm making a smaller batch just in the interest of time, if you all say. So I've got my egg in there. And then this recipe, I really love welcoming you all in my kitchen because I get to like do all of my like cooking hacks. I don't have to pretend to like do everything from scratch. This is chopped onion. This recipe asks for like a couple of tablespoons of onion. Then I have a part of an onion. Then I feel like I have to cook something with the onion. Just watch out for salt in this stuff, but this is dried onion and I'm gonna just use a tiny bit of it because it doesn't have the water in it. So it's more concentrated. So for instance, this recipe is looking for 2 tablespoons of it, and I would put like a quarter of that in it. If you go fresh to dried on any ingredient, you can kind of think that way. So if something calls for fresh parsley, use dried parsley, use a lot less of it. All right, I'm gonna put a tiny bit of salt, but not much. And then this recipe also gets, so I've got my salmon, my eggs, my breadcrumbs. The breadcrumbs are going to use a half cup, so I'm going to say 4 tablespoons.
I know that when you have people in your house who really don't care for onions, like some people just don't like the taste or texture of fresh onions. When I use like the chopped onion from the jar, the dry onion, or the minced onion, then it gives the flavor without that texture, because some people just don't like that texture.
Oh, I love that.
Drew, I have a question about the canned salmon.
Yeah.
I haven't bought canned salmon in a while, but do you have to be careful to make sure that it's the type where the bones? I remember when I bought canned salmon in the past, there's been bones in it and you had to pick through them.
Adrian, I love that you say that. I've only accidentally bought that once, and I'm so glad you can everybody hear her screaming. I'm so glad you brought that up. Yeah, so the canned salmon is like bone, it'll say boneless, skinless. And I think for the most part, if you buy the smaller cans, they're always boneless, skinless. It's like when you get into the bigger cans.
Okay.
All right. Hey, love. I want you to wait and see if another episode starts. And if it doesn't, I want you to maybe come in here and we'll talk for a second, okay? I'm gonna be there in a second, boo, but like you're okay for now. Okay, so I want this. I'm gonna go take care of her for 2 seconds.
Real life moment, real mom moment, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, yes.
And
I had a
for,
question, Melissa, in
go ahead.
regards to the onions. What if
Yes.
the onions don't like you? Does that work that way too? In
Yeah, I
regards
think,
to
like,
digestion and all of that?
I think like the onion powder, without the salt, not onion salt, but onion powder, if you want the flavor, but you don't want the reaction of like a fresh onion, then that's another time to substitute it out. And Sabrina, I did look up with the albacore and the white tuna. I went to Bumblebee, which I think they know what they're talking about. And they said that the albacore is a more, it is a different fish. It's a particular kind of fish, like Drew was saying, whereas the chunk light or chunk white might be a mixture of different kinds of white fish, tends to taste and smell a little fishier, the chunk light, as opposed to the albacore. So if you have a selective eater who may not maybe just be getting introduced to fish or may not like that fishy taste or smell, then the albacore may be a better substitute than either the salmon or the chunk light or chunk white tuna, because it's not as fishy.
Which is the less fishy one, Melissa?
Albacore.
And is that white?
They're both white. Albacore is just a type of white, and the other one is kind of like a mixture, could be a mixture of different white.
So remember, I do want to encourage folks, if you have little kids, watching out for the amount of mercury they're eating, especially, I don't know if anybody else has this experience, but I find if there's something that Lev gets into eating, she wants to eat it frequently. So maybe giving the light tuna a chance, because that's the one that's lower in your mercury.
Okay.
All right. So I want to make sure that this kind of forms into a patty, which it does. It'll make a ball. If it falls apart and is too dry, you can add a little bit more egg, or even just like a tiny bit of water. If it's too wet, it feels like too mushy, you can add more breadcrumbs, but this feels pretty good. And this recipe, it calls for an egg. An egg is a different size sometimes. So I'm gonna make a couple of smaller patties because, is what works for us. But this recipe makes 4, and they're 4 pretty good sized kind of burgers. So I'm kind of mushing them together in my hands, and then I'm making it flat, shaping them a little bit. Also a great job for kiddos, honestly, like encouraging them to just like squish it together and smash it a little bit. And then I've done this with I've got I only have a 4-year-old, but I have a 4 and a 7-year-old in my life, and it's great because the 4-year-old will smash, the 7-year-old will shape and put it on the plate. And the 7-year-old has a lot more of the fine dexterity, will get really into sculpting a specific shape, while the 4-year-old's more at an age of making a ball.
Drew, does the fresh salmon have as much mercury in it as the can?
So salmon has a not significant amount of mercury. It's tuna that you
I mean tuna. I meant tuna.
I don't know. I do not know. I think it would be consistent for, I would more so think about the type of tuna you're getting.
Mhm.
I can't imagine a reason the can would have a different amount in it.
Mhm. And I imagine some of it has to do whether it's farm raised or wild caught, right? And what the farm raised tuna are eating. So, Samira's question makes me wonder, Drew, what if somebody wanted to go for it and make these patties with fresh salmon?
One more time.
What if somebody wanted to make these patties with fresh salmon rather than canned salmon, if they just felt like going for fresh fish?
So what I would say is that it totally works. I actually have somebody who takes a lot of our classes and really prefers it. So you cook it until it's really dry. It is a more expensive way to make it.
Okay.
But you would basically, like, you could, stick it in an oven at 400 degrees for like 15 minutes until it really falls apart and gets kind of a little bit dried out. Okay, so let's see how we're doing. Okay, great. So we have our patties, and I'm gonna check my sweet potatoes. Ooh, and I hear them kind of simmering a little bit. Sizzling. Oh, here we go. Use the sheet pan that was already out. That's like really hard to get them out of the oven. Okay, so let's see. All right, so these, I'm just going to use the quarter of my spatula to see how they're feeling. They're starting to get soft, but kind of going back to Melissa's point. All right, so I'm giving a little stir, and I'm going to give them 8 more minutes, and then I think they're going to be done.
So like the longer they cook, the sweeter they'll get. Is that kind of how it works?
Totally, totally, totally.
And I like mine crispy.
One more time.
I like mine crispy.
So I have learned, I have this moment, and I will admit I frequently do this in a regrettable way. I have this moment where I'm like, oh, they're gonna get too mushy, I have to take them out. But they like almost seem like they're gonna get too mushy, and then that like outside almost too mushy turns into crispy. Also, if you make the oven a little bit, I'm gonna make the oven a little bit hotter. If you make the oven a little bit hotter at the end, it'll like give them that nice crispiness too. All right, so our salmon burgers. I put so you can put these on a cookie sheet, spray them with, it's really great. You can buy, like, I know I bought them at Target recently, just canola oil in a spray can. Spray just a tiny bit of oil. Yes, love? That's really exciting, book. I'm teaching a class, so you're. Oh, okay. All right, bye. Okay. So you can do this in the oven with a tiny bit of oil. You can do this in the oven with no oil, but I feel like they don't kind of get nice on the outsides in the same way. I'm also doing a very small amount. I'm not deep frying. I put probably a tablespoon of oil just so they don't stick to my pan. If you have a nonstick pan, you can do almost no oil. And I'm going to take just a little pinch off of one and put it in my pan. And when it starts to sizzle and gets hot, I'm going to throw them in there and cook them until they're brown on one side and flip them until they're brown on the other side. While we wait for that oil to get hot, any questions?
Is there, with salmon cakes and things like that, I think about different ways to kind of like disguise vegetables or things. I'm always looking at ways to, and just to increase the nutritional value too. So like
putting grated carrots in these, diced celery,
right?
Minced up peppers. You could definitely like finely chop. I feel like most vegetables that are not super watery, if you want to put zucchini in these, you can put some, but you might want to add a little bit more of the breadcrumbs, but you could definitely like put some like sneaky vegetables in them. Yeah, definitely. I love that, Melissa. I do that. I'll sometimes make level wheat meatballs. Actually, meatballs. It's like one of the things on the list. The list isn't very long. Meatballs is on it. And so I at one point just just diced up just like a little bit of I had like little bits of vegetables and then mixed it in. I'll make her turkey meatballs because it's a little bit of a healthier protein. I did that and realized like she doesn't know, once they're all cooked together, she doesn't notice, they just blend in. I do realize I forgot to mention, so these are, the salmon specifically is good because it's a source of fish that's lower in mercury, but also fish is a really, really, really great place to get a lot of protein that's low fat. So a lot of our proteins are going to be meat or cheese. Things that are higher in fat are often paired with proteins, but this is a pretty lean protein source. It's a pretty healthy option. And we'll talk about it, but like the American Heart Association recommendations that you get 2 servings of fish, adults get 2 servings of fish a week, which is about the size of the palm of your hand. Not to say more wouldn't hurt. All right, so I can hear my oil ready, so I'm just gonna put these in. Hey, I hear you coming back, and I want to remind you. I love that you're enthusiastic. No, I want you to stay here. I love that you're enthusiastic to talk to me, but I want you to remember that I have a class here right now. Okay. I hope everybody's learning something about what is happening on Paw Patrol. Great. So we're gonna cook these until they start to brown and then flip them. And I'll show you what they look like done. And then I'm checking my stupid. And I think actually what I'm going to do, how are we on time? Great. I'm going to move you away from my good vision for a second so I can share some things with you all. So what we're going to, there's a number of ways you can eat these. One of them is, I'm really going to go like in a funny direction here. One of them is, I can smell them starting to brown. I'm like over here and I'm like, ooh. So there's a couple of ways to eat these. One of them is you could just eat it on a salad if you're trying to, I feel like a lot of folks these days are trying to stay away from bread sometimes. They're delicious, like a salmon croquet on a salad. A salmon croquet would basically be the same recipe. But if you're eating them on a roll, I always like to encourage folks to eat whole wheat rolls. It is, eating whole grains is a great way to get more nutrients. The difference between a whole and refined grain, I'll show you. I find the visual really helpful, but at the end of the day, it is all of the parts of the grain rather than just one part of the grain. And so it really takes longer to break down in your body. So it keeps you full for longer. While the refined grain, the thing that is white bread versus whole wheat bread, is going to break down into sugar really quickly in your body. So is a less ideal source of sustenance. And when choosing whole wheat bread, you want to watch out for a couple of things. One is that it's funny, actually, just threw out the package, but you know, my husband went grocery shopping this week and came up with this really beautiful, seedy, multi-grain bread. And I looked at it, and the first ingredient was white flour. It was regular all-purpose flour. So it's not whole grain. So multi-grain doesn't mean it's whole grain. Wheat bread doesn't mean it's whole wheat bread. It just means that it's made from wheat. And so I'm going to show you all. I'm going to show you all a kind of well, I'll show you that. This is what these look like when they're done. Oh, this is my mini one for easy mobility. So they're just browned on both sides. And I find with this recipe that if I let it really get browned on both sides, it will be heated through the middle. And the thing you're trying to get is because tuna you can eat straight out of a can, or tuna or salmon you can eat straight out of a can. You want to just make sure you're cooking the egg in it. But I find that if they're browned, they'll be heated all the way through and well cooked. And delicious. I'm so sorry I can't share that with you. The other thing that I'll usually do is put these on a paper plate or paper towel. So it really helps remove any excess oil. So in buying whole wheat bread, I'm going to share my screen for a minute. And I'm going to show you the internet. Okay, so in buying whole wheat bread, first of all, I don't know about you, but I find looking at food labels really overwhelming. This is a whole bunch of information. This is deliberately a whole bunch of information. This could easily be made more accessible for people to read and utilize, but then we would buy less of the delicious ingredients that get us addicted to certain foods like corn syrup if we knew how to look at it, if it wasn't buried. So looking at this food label, I like to just kind of limit it down to a few things. So when I'm looking for whole wheat bread, I ignore all of the words on the front of the package. They're going to tell me what they want me to see. I look at the back ingredients, and I look for the word whole wheat is the first or second ingredient if water is the first ingredient. But for the most part, you're going to see whole wheat flour is the first ingredient. If that first ingredient is enriched flour, wheat flour, malted barley flour, move on. First ingredient, whole wheat. You want the word whole. That's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You want the most wheat in this product. This is in order of weight. So you want the most wheat to be whole wheat. So that's number one. And number two, the thing that if you have a few that you're choosing from, first of all, I always just compare price. If one is more affordable than the other, that might make my decision. But sodium in bread is a big one. A lot of bread is really high in sodium. And so I just look at two things. I'm going to compare two labels. So I got two. I've got this one. And this one I'm pretty sure is the rolls that we're going to be sending out to you all. So I'm going to look at the sodium, and I'm going to look at two things. The serving size is one bun. You want to just find multiple ones that have the same serving size. So sometimes the serving size will be 2. Sometimes I've noticed on like tortilla wraps that like sometimes it will be half, which feels very kind of silly to me. So I see that I have one bun on both of these. I'm looking at serving size. That's funny. It doesn't show up here, but it is one. And then I just look at sodium, and I don't, like, when you're doing this, I don't want you to think, especially if you're in the grocery store with a kid, I don't want you to think too much about, I just see 170 milligrams. Just look at one number and another number, 170 milligrams, 330 milligrams. You're just looking for the lower number. Don't get stuck on how much you're supposed to eat in a day. How, like, really just try to find the one that has the least. And you can do that for a lot of different ingredients you might be buying at the store. All right. All right, any questions about that? About buying whole wheat bread?
I like what you say about buying whole wheat bread, because it does get really tricky. You go in the store and it's like honey wheat, and they even have like whole grain white. I mean, there's so many like different things. And so what you're saying is, by looking at the label and making sure that first or second ingredient says whole wheat, that's how you know you're getting a whole grain, versus looking at the label on the front of the bread.
And Melissa, I even for a long time was like, if it's white in color, it's not a whole grain. If it's brown, it is a whole grain, except there's such thing as bleached whole wheat flour. It's still good for you. The first ingredient will still be whole wheat, and the bread will look white. And also, people will add, or companies will add, molasses to
make it look brown.
Bread to make it look brown. And so it's just white bread with molasses in it.
So go by the ingredient list rather than what you see or what the label says. Nicole, you had a question?
Yes. So what about the sandwich thins?
Say it again.
The sandwich thins. Are those a good bread?
Yes. That's actually, I don't have, I love that you brought that up, because I had them recently and I was like, oh, this is fantastic. When I'm having something like the salmon burger also, I've got my salmon burger, I'll put lettuce and tomato and mayo on it. Sometimes I'll put sliced cucumbers on it. There's a lot of stuff going on. I don't feel like I need a huge piece of bread too. And so what we have to send out are their sandwich thins. And I think that was the actual lesser one that I just showed you. It has the lesser amount of sodium, and it's less sodium, less calories. It's just a thinner, smaller piece of bread. And I feel like because it's a whole grain, it's probably going to fill you up well also.
Right. Thank you. Good question, Nicole.
That was a great question. Thank you.
Another thing, let me see if I see anybody. I'm just going to get my screen up. Another thing, while I'm looking for any more hands, with my kids, it was dipping. To get them to try new things, a lot of times when I wanted to give them something, if they had something to dip it in, whether it be ketchup, whether it be some kind of, sauce I made up or something like that, they always wanted to dip like their fries and dip. If you make like the salmon, if they took it off the bread, which they would do a lot, and then take it and dip it in something. So that's another trick.
Dips, Melissa, is also a great way, is a great thing for kids to help with in the kitchen, and they're probably, yeah.
So do we have any more questions?
I just have one more. I know we're talking about bread, but like Miss Melissa said with dipping, like my kids like tuna, but only with crackers. And I'll be trying to get them to eat it like on a sandwich, and they just want to eat it with crackers. But I like the whole wheat crackers, but they said they danced because they didn't even try it. But are the wheat ones better or the regular ones?
You want them to say whole wheat.
Okay.
For it to say whole wheat. What about rice cakes? Will they eat rice cakes?
No.
Okay. Because that's like a good tuna option, is like on a rice cake. Or
now
corn tortillas.
The baby and the 9-year-old will eat the rice cakes, but only the caramel kind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which kind of counteracts the whole grain, I feel like.
Right.
That's hard. Yeah. That's really, no. It's also, I mean, at the end of the day, like, trying to get a cracker that's whole wheat, trying to get one that looks like the other ones, also great. And a cracker with tuna salad. I replaced some of the mayo with yogurt to make it a little healthier. Yogurt has less calories and more protein than mayonnaise, a lot less calories, but it still has healthy fats because kids, somebody was mentioning trying to get their kid to eat, like if you could get them to eat yogurt, even if it's yogurt with a little bit of honey or something in it, that's like a really great bet. But tuna salad
Coach
on a
Tawana says vegetable crackers. She used vegetable crackers.
And they'll eat them?
Too.
That's great.
Okay.
I know one. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I know one thing. Like I would substitute regular mayo for vegan mayo. My kids start to like that. And then with crackers and stuff like that, I would substitute, like we wouldn't do crackers or we wouldn't do bread. We would do like celery sticks. I'll make like little tuna celery bolts. And one thing I found that was real interesting and really good was we use apple bites. So I would do apple bites. So I'll do the little circle. I'll make the circle, cut the little core out, and then put the tuna on top. So that I have tuna apple bites. So I try to mix it. I love
that suggestion because the tuna salad that we make in our house has diced apple. And so I can attest that it's a really great flavor combination. I can't believe I've never thought of that. I love that. I also heard you do something that maybe is a good, I know we're over time, so maybe a good place to wrap up. That goes back to the book that Melissa started with, which is you just called it a boat. Like making a like lettuce boat of tuna salad, making a lettuce boat of, X, Y, or Z, a lettuce boat of a salmon burger is a really great idea. And calling it a boat makes it more playful and fun.
Right. That's a good point.
Right.
So go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, Melissa, I think we have to wrap up.
I know. I thought I heard some mic chiming in. So thank you guys. It is 5:30. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I will be reaching out to you over the next couple of days. We do have a driver who's going to be making deliveries next week of the ingredients. So everyone here that is participating, everyone here will be receiving a bag of the ingredients, as Drew said. And so I'll reach out to you to schedule that delivery to make sure that you'll be home, or we have someplace that someone that we can leave it with if you're not going to be home. The day that our driver is assigned for is Tuesday. And I know some of you may not be home on Tuesday during the day. So when I reach out to you, you can let me know and we can figure out the best way to get you your ingredients, okay?
Great. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks,
and I'll
Drew.
send out the recipes and the recording to everyone so you can follow along.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Weekend, everyone.
Have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend.
You did a